sample sites are just a couple of probably 30 sample sites in this area.
Hi, I'm Marsh and welcome to this episode of Wet Work, where we go out into the field and do, well, wet work. I'm here with Mr. Patrick Banks, a Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries marine biologist, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about what we're doing today. Mr. Patrick?
Thank you, Austin. What we're going to do today is go out into our coastal area. Today we're in the extreme eastern part of the state, in the Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Bourne area of our coast, and we're going to do some fishery sampling. So we're excited to be here and excited for you to see a little bit about what we do.
Yeah. And I'm also excited to be here with you. So just stay tuned and we'll show you more wet work.
All we're trying to do right now is to scare fish into the net using the engine. We'll make several passes around the net and then pull it back in and see what we have. Of course, part of the enjoyment of doing things like this is you never quite know exactly what you're going to get. Of course, Austin, this is sometimes how samples go. Sometimes you don't catch anything. And of course, zero data is sometimes extremely important.
Seconds to charm.
One of these sites, and it may have been this one not too long ago, produced quite a number of speckled trout. And quite a number of big speckled trout. I would imagine fishermen might would have thought that we took all of their speckled trout, but you'd be surprised how productive these areas are. I mean, you know, just millions and millions of fish out here. Isn't it? Sure enough, a catfish. Just be real careful with it.
Just about 3/4 of a pound.
Okay, let's take him off and let's put him on here. Perfect.
13 inches.
Just toss him out. Okay.
Cat food! Still alive. Cat food.
This pogey is 11 inches, 285 centimeters.
Go on and do some more wet work, guys. What will this be used for in the future?
Well, data like this is very important to our finfish management program. For instance, setting size limits on fish such as speckled trout. Data like this also goes into our age and growth program, which means we also take ear bones out of the fish and we cut those down, and on those ear bones, it's similar to growth rings on a tree. You can tell how old the fish is. You can hold that in the water about a foot down below the surface. Another thing we have to do at each sample site is take water quality measurements, things like water temperature, salinity, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, things of that nature that really tell us a lot about the world that those animals live in. If you'll hold this for me, I'll get the data sheet.
Test. What made you get into this business? What made you become a Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries biologist?
Well, it started quite a number of years ago, similar age to yourself. I enjoyed the outdoors. I was interested in the outdoors, interested in the animals that live there. You know, just because you have an interest in it doesn't mean that you got it all licked, you know. I mean, when you're in school, you take your biologies, your chemistries, your physics, you know, sometimes oceanography classes, things like that. And a big part of biology is also from a math side called statistics. We have to try to figure out what the data is telling us. You know, if we catch a few oysters here but not here, or if we have quite a number of species of fish here but not over here, you know, what is that telling us from a biological standpoint?
What are we going to do next?
Well, I think we'll go out into the world a little bit more, and we'll pull a seine net, what we call, and give us an opportunity to actually jump out the boat and pull a net through the water and jump out the boat, and something we use to measure juvenile of these same species with the gill net that we tried to catch.
Yeah, that's, you know, part of why coastal restoration is so important in the state is, you know, these marshes are nursery areas for all these species that we love to eat and love to catch. Without these nursery areas, you know, of the the coastline, which you're very well aware of, that we're losing these marshes at an unbelievably fast rate, we wouldn't have the fishery that we do.
What exactly are we about to do?
Well, we've pulled up here to this shoreline in order to use this other piece of sampling gear called a seine net. And this is a little bit different than the gill net that we used earlier. As you can see, the mesh sizes are much smaller. Right. And the reason why they're much smaller is because the purpose of this net is to capture and sample small juvenile fish. Right. So the gill net earlier, we were sampling adult fish. This time we're going to sample small juvenile fish.
I know you said this is for juvenile fish, but is there any type of data that you're going to collect from this?
Well, it gives us a good indication of reproduction in different species, how strong the reproductive event may be, things of that nature. So the sampling of juveniles is extremely important. We're going to put one end of the net here on the beach. We're going to use the boat to wrap the rest of the net around, put the other end on another part of the beach there, and then we're going to pull it in and see what we get.
What purpose do these killifish have?
They're one of the more common, I guess, and best marsh edge or marsh surface fishes.
Okay.
These guys will actually get up when the marsh is high, reproduce on the marsh surface, live on the marsh surface. So they're going around eating everything, all the algae, everything else on that marsh surface, coming back off when the water recedes, getting, unfortunately, eaten by bigger things than there. So it's helping to move that energy actually from what's produced in the marsh to then into the water column like that. We'll take these guys, and similar to what we did on the gill nets, we'll do the same with measuring these guys and getting all the information from it, and do the same water quality. And the main thing, unfortunately, with this is dragging this net back to the boat. This is a lot easier putting it out than it is hauling it in. So Patrick and I are going to go get some water and put the net in the boat. Go ahead.
Well, guess I'm stuck doing the hard work. Well, the hard workers go relax. So I guess I have to do it all. So
come on.
Y'all have fun.
In the boat.
You guys really are not going to help me at all. I have no idea what I'm doing. Wet work. It truly is wet work.
Yep, this is the good wet part.
Okay.
There's some debris up in the marsh, and we come across this kind of thing. And of course, looking around in the water, we did find a few oysters here that's growing along the edge. You can see the oyster here, here, and here. And then if you turn this over, you've got even smaller oysters here, here, and here. An oyster about this size is what we would call a spat, which is just a baby oyster, S-P-A-T. An oyster larvae that's swimming around in the water column, microscopic, couldn't settle on the mud and start to grow. He would need some sort of a clean, hard surface to settle on and grow, and these oysters have settled on an old oyster shell.
So that's why whenever you see oyster harvesters, they go and throw their oysters back, and they go to try to build up their own little area.
Absolutely, that's a very important part to that fishery, is to replace hard substrate back on the bottom. If they harvested up all the oysters, kept all those oysters and all those shells, they would be left with a mud bottom, which cannot support oysters. So they put the shells back overboard to grow more oysters. Our oyster sampling, we typically sample fairly intensively from March through October. And then we get away from sampling the oysters themselves because the oyster season has then opened.
Now, Mr. Patrick, I know we moved areas here. Now, where do we move?
Well, we moved from the interior marsh areas out into Lake Bourne, which is a big, large, open body of water, as you can tell, out to a little bit more saline area, which means a little bit higher salt content, a little bit more conducive to grow a lot of oyster reefs. And we're sitting on top of one of the oyster reefs in this area, and what we're going to do is use this piece of sample gear called an oyster dredge to scrape the top of that oyster reef, which is down on the water bottom. This dredge is going to scrape across the top of the oyster reef and pull up some oysters for us.
What's this going to be used for?
Well, the data is extremely important for oyster management. What we try to do is we take a look at the data, see what sizes of the animals we have, and that gives us an idea of how many marketable size oysters we may have. We also look for those small spat, which are the baby oysters, to see about a reproductive event. And then occasionally we might even open up the animals to see what kind of reproductive state the oyster is in.
So we're just gonna let this soak right here and we'll pick it up in a few minutes.
That's right. We're gonna run around for about 3 minutes and see what we catch.
All right.
You're gonna have to sit on the side and grab it and sort of shake it in the water to get some of that mud out. Just be careful with your back. There you go. I'll help you with that. Yeah, rinse it off good. Yeah. All right. Caught a lot of oysters. Yeah, this is just an old dead oyster, but here's something very interesting in here. If you can see closely right here, this is a lot of little fish eggs, probably the eggs of a skillet fish, which typically inhabit an oyster reef. We do take a lot of data about all of these reef-associated animals that you see here. We notate how many mud crabs we find.
Okay.
We notate how many hook mussels we find on these reefs, and of course we notate how many and the sizes of the oysters. So we do want to make sure that we notate that we found a mud crab, because it is a predator of those small spats, so it can reduce the numbers of spat that we have.
And once they get kind of big, they do pinch. I just was a witness to that.
For all the animals we've sampled, we're just going to take an approximate size here from the mouth of the animal here to the hinge, and that's what we're looking at as far as the size. We've got some hook mussels here.
3, 4.
The reason we keep up with data on hook mussels is because it's a competitor with oysters for food that's in the water column.
Say 2mm dead spot, another 2mm dead spot.
And then when those oysters work their way through the economy, it actually makes about a $300 million economic impact to the state, so it's extremely important. So that's the economics of it, but from an ecological side, it's extremely important as well. As you can tell, there's a lot of animals that live around an oyster reef. It's hard bottom, it attracts shrimp, crabs, things like that, and then larger fish come in to eat those. And so it's really, much like the marsh, it's the base of a big food chain.
Well, not only do we have wet work here, we also have dirty jobs. Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot to help out the coast, so I commend you for you guys' work, and I'm glad to see it's happening. I hope it continues in the future.
I appreciate it. I think it's a very piece of important work. It certainly goes into a healthy ecosystem, which of course our marshes play a vital role in. These marshes are extremely important in producing these fish at some point, so it's certainly all ties together. Good job.
Well, we're back here at the marina after a long, hard, tiring day of work. I'd like to thank Mr. Brian and Mr. Patrick with the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. Now, we did do a lot of research out here, but it's up to you at home to do some more research to protect this great coast of ours. So, I'm Austin Mouton for Wet Work, signing off, reminding you to get wet.
That's my fault, man.
And I'd like to thank all the people that helped me and for it. Yeah. That's an edited part anyways. What I gotta say again? I forgot my line.
You're responsible for yourself staying in the boat.
We do well. Wet work.